Okay, so most of you folks disagreed with my last review of a Rutans vs Sontarans story. That's absolutely fine, I can take it. Let's see if I can redeem myself this time. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and today we're going to be reviewing the second installment in the Big Finish Rutans vs Sontaran series. This is a follow-up to the Sontarans vs Rutan box sets from a couple of years ago. The first story of this series was a Fugitive Doctor story, Betrayal at the House of Sontar, and conceptually I thought it was pretty interesting, but I think the end results were pretty mixed. And now we are going into what is essentially a Paul McGann supporting trilogy with Rendition, Grave Moon, and Peace at Last. This second one, Rendition, is mainly fronted by the Second Doctor with a cameo appearance from Paul McGann as the Eighth Doctor. It's like the late 1960s all over again, except we have Michael Troughton playing the Second Doctor, we have Fraser Hines as Jamie, and we have Wendy Padbury as Zoe. And Rendition, written by Tim Foley, takes place at the edge of the Sontaran and Rutan War. We are on a medical ship called the Lockhart. The Second Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe land on this ship, and it's more or less deserted of staff. There's only one person, Nurse Marva, played by Lucy Scott, who is looking after a group of Rutans, who are all played by Tom Alexander. And these Rutans are very interesting. They've developed some sense of individuality. They are not all part of the collective Rutan host hive mind, and what they're trying to do on the Lockhart is that the Rutans are trying to awaken Zola, who is their Rutan commander, who is unconscious, and in order to do this, they are writing war poetry, which is very un-Rutan-like. However, the Sontarans are approaching fast, all of the Sontarans here played by Jonathan Carley, and the Doctor is going to try and save these Rutans and try and get to the bottom of their newfound individuality, all the while Zoe and another Doctor incarnation are going to try and salvage the Lockhart ship to try and escape.
It's impossible, Nurse Marva. We must remain.
And why is that?
Will you stay with us? Will you?
Well, me? Well, I'm not going anywhere yet.
Then I will be like him, Nurse.
I will be like... Hey, Doctor, look! He's taken my face. Remarkable.
It's an exceptional likeness, even if he is still green. Now that was a foolish thing to do, wasn't it, 32?
I'm all sleepy now.
Yes, you'll have worn yourself out.
Sleep now. Sleep again.
They mustn't be shifting. It completely exhausts them.
What is going on? Then all the, patients have this ability?
Of course they do. But you must know this.
Yes. It took a moment, but I know what this creature is. What they all are.
Then what are they, Doctor?
One of the most dangerous races in the galaxy. The Rutans. But that means... Oh no. The war outside. They're fighting the Sontarans.
I wasn't joking earlier when I said it does feel like the late 1960s all over again. Rutans vs Sontarans Rendition is another Second Doctor Base Under Siege story, and personally I just find that quite hilarious, that all these years later, this is still the definitive Second Doctor format. Even when it comes to a race, even when it comes to a species like the Sontarans and the Rutans, that in the TV series the Doctor hadn't officially met yet. The Second Doctor knows all about the Rutan and Sontaran conflict, which is pretty efficient when it comes to the storytelling of Rendition, because it means that it really can just hit the ground running, and we can really use this hour to explore the themes that Rendition is going for, and that is essentially war poetry as a different form of collective thought. If you have the Rutans as this hive mind species, but then they get separated from the Rutan host and they're injured in the Lockhart, then how do they have some form of collectivism? And it's through their war trauma, it's through their poetry, it's through their collective coping mechanisms through this Sontaran and Rutan conflict, and that's quietly powerful. And I think while Fraser Hines as Jamie doesn't have that much to contribute to the actual plot, the second Doctor keeps the energy and the pace and the structure moving. Zoe is behind the scenes making sure all the logistics work, as is very Zoe of her. Jamie is essentially the unorthodox heart of the story. There's a really lovely scene like midway through, like where Jamie sort of offhandedly mentions to Zoe the family that he doesn't really talk about much, including a younger brother. And that's a nice little detail that just comes across as a bit of character texture, just a bit of additional characterization midway through this story that's unrelated. But Tim Foley does a really nice narrative sleight of hand towards the end of Rendition to really pay off of that theme. It was a really lovely closer to the story, and I think Fraser Hines is really terrific in this story. I also think that he does a great job voicing one of the Rutons who takes on his physical appearance in the story, but without the Scottish accent. I think both Fraser Hines and Tom Alexander, who collectively play the Rutons in Rendition, I think that they really give the story credence and credibility, emotionally I mean. And shout out to Jonathan Carley, who I think is trying to channel Kevin Lindsay from the 1970s, from the Sontaran Experiment and the Time Warrior, as the original Sontaran actor. I think that's who Jonathan Carley is trying to channel here. He does a really good job. Yeah, he's really good as a Sontaran alternative to someone like Christopher Ryan and Dan Starkey. He's really, really good. Shout out to his delivery on "Sontarans do not whisper." It's a great line. I think my favourite part on reflection of Rendition is the first half of the story before the Sontaran threat can rear its ugly potato head. It's just these really nice, small, intimate scenes between the second Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe, where they're sharing food together in the abandoned diner. The scenes between the Doctor and Marva, just trying to figure out who this inconspicuous nurse is, who clearly has something to hide. It does kind of lull the audience into a slight false sense of security before the second half of the story really starts amping up the action, starts amping up the stakes, and that's when Paul McGann's 8th Doctor comes in. Cards on the table, while listening to Rendition, I completely forgot that the 8th Doctor was meant to be in this story, so when he just randomly appeared with Zoe, it was a nice pleasant surprise. Paul McGann's really good. I do like that he's trying not to change the web of time, you know, he's trying not to like ingratiate himself too much with Zoe, like he doesn't want to leave too much of an impression on this character. And while you could realistically just remove him from Rendition entirely, I think it kind of establishes that Rendition it's a strong standalone story, but it's also a story that's able to do a lot of heavy lifting in the broader narrative by establishing that the events of Betrayal at the House of Sontar do have ramifications that lead into Rendition, and then we have the 8th Doctor who's going to be taking us forward in Grave Moon and Peace at Last, which are the next two installments in this series. It kind of feels like a big long-running saga that is a lot more deliberate than I initially thought it would be. I thought that these would be just 4 more or less standalone stories, but they are standalone, but there's definitely a game plan here, including but not limited to the legend of this lost Rutan called Melmoth. I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out over the course of these stories. Rendition is, as you'd expect, a solid second Doctor based Under Siege story, and Michael Troughton is just getting better all the time at channeling his father or channeling his own like unique incarnation of the second Doctor. I think he's really, really strong here. But it was also just a really interesting story about collective trauma, about collective poetry and coping mechanisms. I thought it was a really, really strong installment, with lovely character beats, some really fun dialogue and action moments, and yeah, this was a really strong story. In my eyes, it definitely makes up for Betrayal at the House of Sontar, which, you know, I didn't dislike it. It wasn't a bad story, it just didn't really quite work for me, and I think that The Fugitive Doctor was kind of the wrong Doctor for this particular story, even though it was conceptually very interesting. This one is not as interested in the whole meta-commentary of the Doctor as a character, but is still on its own as a standalone base Under Siege adventure. Really, really good. And thank you for watching my review of Doctor Who Rutans vs Sontarans Rendition, the second installment in the Rutans and Sontarans story. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, subscribe for more Doctor Who Big Finish reviews, and folks, I'll see you all next time.